The rising sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink as Alex stood in the doorway of their small home, cradling their newborn daughter, Mia. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, her wide eyes filled with wonder as she stared up at him. It was a moment that should have been perfect, a moment of love and unity. But behind him, Zara packed her belongings in silence, her glowing blue skin reflecting the morning light like shimmering water. Her usually bright eyes were dull with sorrow. Each movement was deliberate, slow, as though delaying the inevitable would somehow make it easier. She stole glances at Alex and Mia, her heart breaking with every step she took closer to the door. "You don't have to do this," Alex said, his voice tight with restrained emotion. He hadn't looked at her in hours, afraid his resolve might shatter if he did. "We can find a way. Together." Zara stopped mid-step, her back to him, her slender shoulders trembling. "You don't understand, Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not leaving because I want to. I'm leaving because I have to." "That's not an answer." His tone sharpened, frustration creeping into his words. "We've faced everything together up until now. Why is this different?" She turned to face him, her hands clutching the edge of the table for support. Her luminescent skin pulsed faintly, betraying the storm of emotion she was trying to suppress. "Because my people won't stop until I do. The council has demanded my return. If I stay, they'll escalate their actions, Alex. They'll come for you, for Mia. And they won't stop until the three of us are destroyed." Alex shook his head, disbelief etched across his face. "Then we fight. We stand our ground. I'll protect us." Zara stepped closer, reaching out but stopping short of touching him. "You don't understand what they're capable of. My people have been navigating the stars for millennia. Earth is still learning to look beyond its own atmosphere. If they see you as a threat, they will raise everything in their path." The weight of her words sank in, silencing Alex momentarily. The thought of danger looming over his daughter, so small and fragile in his arms, chilled him to the core. But the idea of losing Zara, the woman he loved, was just as unbearable. "So, you're just going to walk away? From her?" His voice cracked as he gestured to Mia. "From me?" Tears welled in Zara's eyes as she gazed at Mia. The child's pale skin carried faint traces of her Vanari heritage, with a subtle iridescence that shimmered under the light. Her innocent gaze met Zara's, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Zara leaned down, pressing her forehead gently against Mia's, her tears falling freely. "I'm doing this for her," Zara whispered. "For you. If I stay, I'll only bring danger. I'm leaving so you both can have a chance at a normal life." Alex took a deep breath, his jaw clenched tightly as he fought back his own tears. Normal? How is she supposed to have a normal life without her mother? Without answers to who she is? "I'll come back," Zara said, though her voice trembled with doubt. "When it's safe. When I've convinced the council that you're not a threat. I'll find a way." The words offered little comfort. Alex wanted to believe her, but the pain of her impending departure made hope feel impossible. Zara picked up the last of her belongings, a small case containing relics from her homeworld, and stepped toward the door. "Zara, wait!" Alex called, his voice tinged with desperation. But she was already gone, stepping into the cool morning air where her sleek silver spacecraft awaited. The hum of its engines filled the air, a low, mournful sound that matched the ache in Alex's chest. From the ship's entrance, Zara paused one last time to look back. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, a lifetime of love and sorrow passed between them. She opened her mouth to speak but said nothing. Instead, she turned and entered the ship. The door sealed with a quiet hiss, and moments later, the craft descended into the sky. Alex stood there, holding Mia tightly as the ship became a distant speck, then disappeared altogether. Mia stirred, her tiny fingers grasping at his shirt. Alex looked down at her, his vision blurred by tears. It's just us now, kiddo, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But I promise, I'll give you everything. Even if she's not here. As the sun rose higher, bathing the earth in golden light, Alex turned and walked back inside, closing the door on a life that was now forever changed. Zara sat in the dimly lit cockpit of her spacecraft, her hands gripping the controls with a force that turned her knuckles pale blue. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cabin, a constant reminder of her departure. Through the viewport, the vastness of space stretched endlessly, a void both literal and metaphorical. Stars twinkled coldly in the distance, indifferent to the turmoil within her. She replayed Alex's face in her mind, his mixture of heartbreak and anger, and the image of Mia's innocent eyes, so full of wonder. She hadn't even been able to say goodbye properly. Words had felt too fragile, too insignificant, to contain the depth of her emotions. Now, with the emptiness of space her only companion, the weight of her decision settled heavily on her shoulders. The Venari Council awaited her on Valerian, their demands clear: sever ties with Earth or face exile and dishonor. To them, her union with a human was a betrayal of their cultural purity, a step too far in the fragile diplomacy between species. They had cloaked their ultimatum in concern for her safety, but Zara knew better. Her child, a hybrid, was a symbol of change, and change was a threat to their centuries-old traditions. The ship's autopilot engaged, freeing Zara from the controls. She leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes, hoping for some reprieve from the gnawing guilt. Instead, her mind drifted to memories of Alex and their time together. She remembered the first time they met, in the sprawling gardens of an Earth Venari Cultural Exchange Center. Alex had been so different from the stoic, analytical humans she'd encountered before. He spoke passionately about Earth's ecosystems, his hands animated as he described the interconnectedness of life. It had been his curiosity and open-mindedness that had drawn her to him. Over time, curiosity had blossomed into love. Their love hadn't been easy. Both had faced scrutiny from their respective worlds, but they had persevered until now. Zara opened her eyes, the memories too painful to linger on. She looked out into the stars, searching for answers she knew she wouldn't find. On Earth, Alex sat at his cluttered desk, staring blankly at his computer screen. Scientific papers and charts were spread out before him, but his mind refused to focus. The house felt emptier without Zara, her presence once so vibrant now replaced by a suffocating silence. He glanced over at Mia, who sat on the living room floor surrounded by building blocks. At 3 months old, she was too young to understand what had happened, but Alex could already see Zara's influence in her, the faint shimmer of her skin, the sharpness of her gaze. Mia's laughter broke through his haze as she knocked over a tower of blocks. Alex smiled despite himself, the sound a brief balm for his pain. He stood and scooped her up, holding her close. "You're going to be something amazing, you know that?" he whispered. "Doesn't matter where you come from. You've got the best of both of us." But as he held her, questions loomed in his mind. How would he raise a child with Venari heritage? How could he teach her about a world he didn't fully understand? And what would he tell her about Zara when the inevitable questions came? Back on her ship, Zara approached Valerian, the glowing blue orb of her homeworld growing larger in the viewport. It was a planet of crystalline forests, floating cities, and skies filled with auroras. Normally, the sight filled her with pride. Today, it felt alien. The landing pad was bustling with activity as her ship descended. Venari officials in flowing robes waited to escort her to the council. As she stepped out of the ship, their telepathic voices immediately filled her mind, a cacophony of greetings and reassurances laced with unspoken judgment. "You have done the right thing," one of the council representatives said, his tone calm but authoritative. "The path you've chosen ensures the safety of your child and the stability of our people." Zara nodded but said nothing. Inside, her thoughts were in turmoil. She had done what was expected of her, but at what cost? Could she live with the choices she had made? Over the next weeks, Zara resumed her role as a diplomat, mediating disputes between factions on Valerian and other star systems. She excelled in her work, her telepathic abilities allowing her to understand and bridge cultural divides. Yet, the ache for her family never subsided. Late at night, alone in her quarters, she would stare at the small hologram of Mia that Alex had given her, a fleeting moment captured during a quiet afternoon at home. She would replay Alex's voice in her mind, the way he had begged her to stay. And she would cry, silent tears for a life she had left behind. 3 years passed in this way, Zara's days filled with diplomatic missions and her nights consumed by longing. She followed news of Earth whenever she could, searching for glimpses of Alex and Mia, though they rarely appeared in the reports. On Earth, Alex adapted to single fatherhood. He learned how to soothe Mia's cries when her telepathic surges overwhelmed her, and he taught her to navigate the strange duality of her existence. She grew into a bright, inquisitive child, her Venari heritage evident in her quick mind and shimmering skin. But despite their progress, a void lingered in their lives. It was a void shaped like Zara, and neither Alex nor Mia could fully escape it. In the stillness of space, Zara made a decision. She could no longer live with the guilt of her absence. The Council's threats, the cultural divides, they no longer outweighed her need to be with her family. It was time to return, to face the consequences of her actions, and to seek the forgiveness of the two people she loved most. As she plotted her course back to Earth, Zara's heart raced with anticipation and fear. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew one thing for certain: she would do everything in her power to mend what had been broken. The Earth's blue and green sphere grew larger on Zara's navigation screen as her spacecraft descended through the atmosphere. It had been 3 long years since she had seen her adopted homeworld, and it looked both familiar and alien through her eyes now. The shimmering heat of re-entry rattled the craft, but Zara barely noticed. Her mind was consumed by a singular question: would Alex and Mia even want her back? As the craft slowed and leveled out, Zara's hands trembled against the controls. Her people might have viewed her as a seasoned diplomat, a woman of unwavering resolve, but in this moment, she felt like a fragile shard of crystal, ready to shatter under the weight of her own uncertainty. She adjusted her trajectory, aiming for the coordinates of the small eco-home she once shared with Alex. Alex stood outside in the backyard, tending to the vertical garden he had built to teach Mia about Earth's biodiversity. The sound of a faint, distant hum made him look up. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the sleek, silvery spacecraft descending toward the clearing beyond the house. He hadn't seen a Venari craft in years, not since Zara had left. He froze, his mind racing. Could it be her? He didn't want to hope. Hope had been a dangerous thing after she left, a trap that kept him from moving forward. But now, as the ship landed with a soft hiss and its engines powered down, he couldn't deny the possibility. Mia, now 3 years old, stood at the edge of the yard. She tilted her head, her shimmering, iridescent skin catching the sunlight. "Daddy," she said, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Who's coming?" Alex knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "I don't know, kiddo," he said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. The ship's door opened with a quiet mechanical whir, and Zara stepped out. Her tall, graceful figure was immediately recognizable, her blue skin glowing faintly in the sunlight. She hesitated at the base of the ramp, her eyes searching for Alex and Mia. When their gazes met, time seemed to freeze. "Alex," she said softly, her voice trembling. He didn't move, his expression a mix of shock, anger, and something Zara couldn't quite place. Mia, on the other hand, stepped forward, her small face scrunched with confusion. "Who's that?" Mia asked, looking up at her father. Alex took a deep breath, his jaw tightening. "That's..." He hesitated, the word caught in his throat. "That's your mother." Mia's eyes widened. She turned back toward Zara, studying her with a mix of curiosity and caution. Zara's heart ached at the sight of her daughter, so much older than when she had last seen her, yet still carrying the same innocent wonder in her gaze. Zara knelt, keeping her distance but lowering herself to Mia's level. "Hello, Mia," she said, her voice soft and careful. "I've missed you so much." Mia didn't reply right away. She looked back at Alex, searching his face for guidance. Alex's expression remained stoic, but he gave her a small nod. Cautiously, Mia approached Zara. She stopped a few feet away, studying her with wide eyes. "You're blue," Mia said bluntly, her tone not unkind but filled with the candidness of a child. Zara smiled, a small, shaky laugh escaping her lips. "Yes, I am," she said. "And you have a little bit of blue, too. It's part of who we are." Mia looked down at her own shimmering skin, then back up at Zara. "Why did you go away?" The question hit Zara like a physical blow. She swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought it was the only way to keep you and your dad safe," she said, her voice breaking. "But leaving, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I was wrong. I should have stayed. I'm so sorry, Mia." Mia frowned, her little face scrunching in thought. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Zara's neck. Zara froze for a moment, then returned the embrace, tears streaming down her cheeks as she held her daughter for the first time in 3 years. Alex watched the scene unfold, his emotions in turmoil. Part of him wanted to pull Zara aside and demand answers, to unleash the anger and pain he had carried for so long. But another part of him, one he had buried deep, felt a flicker of relief, even hope. Seeing Zara with Mia, their connection immediate and undeniable, made him question the walls he had built around himself. When Mia finally stepped back, Zara stood and turned to Alex. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy between them. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Zara began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I had to come back. For Mia. For you. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Alex crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. 3 years, Zara," he said, his voice tight. 3 years of silence. Do you have any idea what that's been like? For me? For her? "I do," Zara said, her voice cracking. "And I hate myself for it. But I'm here now. If you'll let me, I'll do everything I can to make up for the time I lost." Alex looked at her for a long moment, his emotions warring within him. Finally, he let out a long sigh and gestured toward the house. "We should talk." Zara nodded, following him toward the house while Mia ran ahead, her laughter ringing through the yard. As Zara stepped inside, she was struck by how little had changed. The same plants adorned the windowsills, the same cozy furniture filled the rooms. But it wasn't the house she cared about, it was the people inside it. She had a long way to go to earn back their trust, but for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel: hope. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room. Zara sat stiffly on the couch, her hands folded in her lap as she waited for Alex to speak. He stood near the window, his back to her, gazing out at the twilight. The silence between them was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional giggle from Mia as she played in her room. Finally, Alex turned to face her. His expression was a mix of exhaustion and guarded vulnerability. "You said you left to protect us. But did you ever think about what it would do to us? What it would do to her?" Zara looked down at her hands, guilt tightening her throat. "Not enough," she admitted. "I thought I was making the right choice. The council made it clear that my connection to you both was dangerous, not just for me, but for you. I was afraid, Alex. I was afraid of losing you and Mia in a way I couldn't control." "You still lost us," Alex said, his voice hard. "But instead of losing us to danger, you chose to walk away. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Raising her alone? Watching her struggle with powers I don't even understand, knowing she'd never have answers because you weren't here?" Zara's eyes filled with tears. I know I failed you, she said, her voice trembling. Every day I've been away, I've thought about you and Mia. I've imagined what I could have done differently, what I should have done. I know I can't undo the past, Alex, but I want to try to fix it. I want to be here for both of you if you'll let me. Alex sighed and sat down across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His gaze softened, though his weariness remained. Do you really think you can just walk back into our lives? That everything will go back to the way it was? No, Zara said, shaking her head. I don't expect that. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. But I want to try. I want to show Mia who I am, where she comes from. And I want to show you that I'm not running anymore. Alex studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers for sincerity. Finally, he nodded slightly, though his expression remained cautious. This isn't going to be easy, he said. I've spent 3 years building a life for Mia and me, and I'm not going to let anything disrupt that. I understand, Zara said. I'll take it one step at a time. Just let me be a part of her life and yours however you're comfortable. The days that followed were tentative, filled with small, cautious steps toward rebuilding their family. Zara spent hours with Mia, teaching her about Vanari culture and helping her harness her burgeoning telepathic abilities. Mia's excitement was contagious, her natural curiosity breaking down barriers faster than Zara could have hoped. One afternoon, Zara and Mia sat in the garden, their hands hovering over a row of freshly planted flowers. Mia giggled as the flowers slowly began to bloom, responding to the faint pulses of energy Zara taught her to project. Look, Daddy. Mia called as Alex stepped outside. Mommy taught me how to do this. Alex froze for a moment, the word mommy catching him off guard. He hadn't heard Mia use it before. He watched them, his heart conflicted as Zara laughed alongside their daughter, her face alight with joy he hadn't seen in years. He joined them in the garden, crouching down beside Mia. You're getting really good at this, kiddo, he said, ruffling her hair. Then, he looked at Zara. I have to admit, I wasn't sure how this would work. But, she's happier. And I think you're a big part of that. Zara smiled, gratitude shining in her eyes. She's incredible, Alex. That's because of you. You've done an amazing job raising her. Alex shrugged, his cheeks reddening slightly. I did my best. But she needs both of us. Zara nodded, her voice soft. I know. And I'm here now. For her. And for you if you'll have me. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, the wounds of the past began to heal. Zara worked tirelessly to prove her commitment, helping Alex with Mia's education, sharing her knowledge of Vanari science and culture, and even lending her skills to Alex's environmental research. Their shared goals and the love they both had for Mia began to rekindle a bond that had been buried under years of hurt. One evening, after Mia had gone to bed, Alex and Zara sat together on the porch, the night sky stretching above them. The silence was comfortable now, a shared moment of peace rather than tension. You know, Alex said, breaking the quiet, I hated you for a long time. For leaving. For thinking you knew what was best for us without talking to me. But I can see now that you thought you were doing the right thing. And I can see how much you're trying to make up for it. Zara looked at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I'll never stop trying, Alex. I'll never stop trying to be the person you and Mia deserve. He reached out, taking her hand in his. We're not there yet. But we're getting closer. As the stars twinkled above them, Zara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. She still had a long road ahead, but for the first time since she'd left, she believed that the future held something worth fighting for, a family that was learning to be whole again.